Hello again and welcome to the Team Calamity YouTube channel. I'm Richard.
And I'm Mitch.
And we've got another Opus 4 gameplay video for you today. We have both had a bit of spare time, so we thought we'd do some commentary instead of just laying a song through the background. So I went for Earth Wind this time and Mitchell went for Earth Fire. Mitch, do you just want to go sort of through like the main cards and basic sort of play style for the deck?
Yeah, so the deck was called Kefka's Unbreakables, and the idea behind the deck is literally you Kefka something and try and keep it alive via different means. So I was running the 2-drop Llednar, and the idea behind that one is you swing with it, and if your opponent doesn't pay 2, you Kefka it, and then they lose their forward. If not, they're just going to take a point of damage. Seems to be really strong play. Just for a 2-drop, it's caused a lot of people a lot of problems, especially against Wind Lightning, because they have to ping it a few times, end up having to pay like 4 to 6 CP just to get rid of a 2-drop. It's just incredible value. We've got the Scarmiglione, which is just a nice surprise blocker. The swing, just thinking to get a cheap point of damage through, summon Scarmiglione, Kefka it, and just, if that dies, who cares? It's a crappy Scarmiglione. We've got Sabin, which is to keep things alive, same as like Titan and stuff like that. And you've got Vanille, which again is feel free to, like, it can just die. You can just Hecaton a Hecaton out of your deck and just keep it alive that way. But you can also Sabin it as well. I was running the forward Rauban as well, because there's a few nice little plays you can do where you can summon Rauban, pop a forward and Kefka your forward to keep it alive, and then you can Hecaton something else and end up doing a 2-for-1 trade. And even if you wanted to, you could summon Sabin just to keep it alive, like in between. It seems to be quite a nice little play. I was running Saz, don't. But as I said, the idea was it was just untargetable, and it can become like an 8 to 9k, which was quite nice at the time and was a struggle for people to deal with. But if you don't get that sort of play off, then it's terrible. The only thing I really liked was the Daj backup, because it didn't actually do anything once it was on the field other than help Saz stay alive. So it was free to just be used for CP, such as Sabin's attacking ability where it gets 2k. I was also running obviously the Kefkas and the Opus 4 Monk. Again, it was basically another Titan, and running Titans just to keep everything alive. You sort of want to keep all your forwards alive, just because while they are strong, you don't want, like, you're not really running many different forwards. They're all practically the same name, which is basically you're not going to be swarming the field, so you want to keep the most value you can out of all your forwards. The things I would change is I'll probably take out an Emperor, a Vanille, and the Sazes, because again, as I said before, they're terrible. I'd run in a Legendary Warrior of Light. I think it's a good idea in this deck because it takes less damage, works well with the Opus 4 Hecaton just for more removal, and its special also works very well with Kefka, so it's a nice idea. The weaknesses of the deck, it's quite susceptible to removal, because you're sort of in turn removing your own forwards with Kefka. You have to use all your saving, like Titan and stuff like that, on your own cards, so you want to sort of save those against like a Wind Lightning deck, which means you can't really use your Kefka, so it sort of swings around, right? So you can't really do much. So it all depends on how you want to play it, that matchup, but I can't really find the sweet spot of when to use it and when to not, but that might just be me. Rich, what about your deck?
So my deck is Earth Wind, and the main card in it, and try not to laugh, is Legendary Vaan. Now this deck this deck came about, we were having a conversation with all of our friends as to what the most useless legend was, and somebody said Legendary Vaan, and I was like, not happening. So I decided to build a deck that I was going to try and premiere Legendary Vaan as this horribly underutilized and underappreciated card. So the way that I went about that was to use the new black belt backup from Opus 4, which is when you enter the field, take one of your forwards and give it plus 5,000 power. So ideally you would want to play the black belt, target Vaan, make him to 13 or 14 with Maria, swing with him, send the black belt back to your hand and reactivate the Vaan, so it's kind of like a pseudo brave action, and then your black belt is back in hand for you to then use the following turn and just kind of rinse and repeat. Now, having to play the 2-drop backup every single turn can be a bit of a drain on the resource, bit of a drain on your resources. So I tried to mitigate that by running Nono from Opus 4, which is a fantastic card. I absolutely love it. So when a forward of yours attacks, you can untap a backup. And everyone goes for like these really cheesy tactics that synergize with it, like Nono and Zemus, so you can keep making forwards completely unblockable. But I used it in this case to just kind of mitigate the cost of having to play a 2-drop backup every turn. So it became a point where we're actually now in this video where I was paying 1 CP and essentially made Vaan 13k brave attacker, and it was fantastic on the evening. Other cards in the deck included the Opus 2 Vincent and one of the Opus 4 hero ones just for death penalty, a bit removal, and also the Opus 3 Yuffie, so I could make him with Maria a 10k brave attacker. There was more brave in the form of Guy, which is fantastic against ice and lightning matchups. I also ran a Shadow Lord because there's quite a lot of pesky 2-drops about at the moment. Like I knew Mitchell was going to be playing Llednar, and there's a couple of people that play Gold Bears on our normal weekly tournaments, and you know, you occasionally see stuff like a Babus sort of rear its head, which is really, really annoying. So I mean, if I can play it, it's an on the curve forward anyway. I didn't really want to run Emp in this deck because it was a bit slow. So if I can play an on the curve forward and kill something, that just gives me even better value. But the general theme of the deck was just to push through with brave attackers and playing the black belts to make sure that I could kind of swing a little bit more safely. And in this matchup in particular, it kind of, I don't want to say countered the Kefka, but it did help kind of counter the Kefka a little bit, because Mitchell had to tap to deal to increase a forward's power by 5,000, whereas and at the end of the turn he could lose that forward, whereas I wasn't going to lose my forward if I could just get it over the power of his. So it kind of discouraged him from using Kefka on stuff. I think I went with 8 summons, which was 2 Hecatons, 2 Titans, 2 Sylph, 1 of the Opus 1 Hecaton and 1 Alexander. And backups wise, I run the Opus 4 Archer. I really like the Opus 4 Archer, but Mitch always laughs at me when I run it and tells me that I should run the Opus 1 one. But I think if you're running a wind deck that's not, or running wind in a deck that's not based on ping damage, you can get away with running the Opus 4 one, and it's really, really good because it can turn your opponent could maybe think that they're trading like an 8k for an 8k, and then you decide to break your archer and they've lost their 8k and yours lives because you select their forward and say, oh, well, it's going to do 0 damage this turn. Other than that, it's just the general, the other backups are just kind of the general ones that you'd see in an Earth Wind deck anyway. So Maria, obviously, Masked Woman for a little bit of removal, 2 backup Ralbarn, just because there's not a lot of EX bursts in the deck, so just tried to like buff that up a little bit, and you see I've just hit one off the EX burst a moment ago, which was really, really handy to kill his Emp. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I like the deck because it can deal with almost anything your opponent has. Like the Vincent death penalty is brilliant for if they have 3 and 4 drops on the board, because obviously you can select up to 7. The Shadow Lord will deal with any pesky 2 drops they might have, so it's worth more in sort of goal-based matchups. And if people are playing like a more traditional mono water where they're dropping loads of 2-drop knights via Llednar and stuff like that, you can sometimes kill 1 or 2 forwards with it, which is awesome. And I've also got 1 Alexander in there to deal with anything that's 5 or above. So in terms of breaking things of certain costs, I can deal with 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops and 5 drops relatively easily.
So is there anything you would change in your deck going forward?
I don't know, I grow quite attached to to how I run things. I've run 3 Balthier, and the reason is that I was going to use that kind of like people use Y'shtola, where they sort of ping Dadaluma and ping an opponent forward for 4k, and they can kind of repeat that. And I was hoping that if I could get the Vaan train rolling and constantly be putting backups back to my hand and replaying them, I could use Balthier, ping Dadaluma, play a backup, activate and ping him again and take something that's 8k out. But I just think Balthier as a card was probably a little bit slow, and because the rest of this deck is so slow, I probably could have upped the tempo a little bit and played something else. And also Dadaluma didn't really do much in this deck, because a lot of the time I was having to throw Balthiers out because I'd much rather play, you know, other cards. And because of that, like, Dadaluma was kind of less... I mean, he works well in certain matchups, like in Wind Lightning he works quite well, in Ice Lightning he works quite well, but on the night there wasn't really much of that about. So I probably would have taken him out, and I'd probably put Guy up to a 3. But other than that, I don't know if there's really much more I'd change.
Oh. So, is there anything like you would take out? Just I'm not really thinking about like a replacement, but just anything you definitely didn't like in the deck. For example, like I didn't like Saz in the deck. Would you change anything about that?
Yeah, probably Balthier. Balthier was a bad shout.
Just Balthier.
just Balthier.
So, what would you say? Like, because I see you running like the Shadow Lord. Would you advise people to run that more often than not, or?
It depends it depends how attached you are to other light and dark cards. Like, I know Emp is a big deal at the moment. He became a big deal because of monsters, and people wanted to shut that down. But over time, I think people are starting to see that monsters are like designated monster decks that are like Mirror and Realm and stuff like that aren't actually that strong in the grand scheme of things, unless you're running board clears and stuff like that to kind of empty your opponent's side of the board and not your monsters and then make them forwards.
Yeah.
But I'm not massively attached to any particular light or dark cards, with the exception of the Cloud Hero Blade Beam one, but you'd only run that in a particular type of deck. I'm saying if you're not attached to any light or dark cards, just drop one Shadow Lord in. Just give it a go. You don't know it till you try it, and when you've got him on the board, he can be really, really useful.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it might be because I was running the Llednar and the Saz and stuff like that, but I did feel like it was quite strong in the matchup that we had, because we played a few games, like we played during the tournament, and I remember dropping Saz and Llednar against you and thinking you're going to really struggle with these, and then the next turn you dropped Shadow Lord, and I was like, right, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I've just lost 2 forwards for nothing. Then it was, as I said, like Llednar's a very, like, Llednar, not so much Saz, but Llednar's a very good, strong card. I think people really underrate it, and I think you've sort of picked up on how strong it is in certain matchups, and it does counter a lot of the meta. I think, like, I wouldn't say so much mono water, because they can just Cagnazo it down to like 0 without even thinking about it, but like in like the Scourge of Wind Lightning, it just seems to be just a card that just sticks around. Even like, just if they just choose to a simple play like Hector into Orlando, you're targeting it twice, you have to pay an extra 2, and if they're already paying 5 for Orlando, they're going to be paying 9. That's basically a Raiden. So, as I said, like, it's a really underrated card, and I would recommend other people using that card as well, especially in cahoots with Kefka.
I was going to say, you get the most of it out of with Kefka, because a lot of the time it would be a free block, and you kind of look at your opponent and say, are you going to pay 2? And they say no, and you're like, cool, I got a free block. Whereas with Kefka, it's like, are you going to pay 2? They say no, you Kefka it, and then you're like, okay, now you lose the forward that you swung with.
Yeah. That Kefka really unlocks the aggressive potential of Llednar. I think there are other plays that you can do with it, so like you can swing with Llednar and block, and if they don't pay 2, then you can Hecaton and actually just get rid of a forward, and it's really strong.
Okay, and that's all we've got time for.
Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, deck suggestions, or any ideas you'd like to see, please leave a comment in below, and thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.